Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Raspberry Pi video for the Progressive Kids Raspberry Pi course. Now for this video we're going to be going over how to install Raspbian onto your micro SD card for your Raspberry Pi. Now Raspbian is the operating system that your Raspberry Pi runs. You can think of it as basically the system that your Pi runs to be able to turn on and run all your programs. Kind of like Windows or Mac, Windows or Mac OS, but for your Raspberry Pi. Now for this video, you're going to need two things. You're going to need one, a micro SD card. We recommend at least 16 gigabytes or more. Either a micro SD card to SD card adapter, or if your computer doesn't have a SD card slot, you can instead use a micro SD to USB adapter, just like this over here. Either one of those works. You just need some way to plug in this micro SD card into your laptop or desktop. Alright, so you can see here I am on my Windows computer, and here's a quick note. Since I recorded that introduction, the name of the Raspberry Pi operating system has actually changed from Raspbian to Raspberry Pi OS, so that's what I'm going to be referring to it from here on out. Anyways, if I open up File Explorer, you can see under this PC I have my micro SD card plugged into my computer right here. You can see the name is New Volume. It might be something else for you. And here's something to note. Know that when we're installing the operating system onto this micro SD card, any data that you might have on it will be deleted, so make sure you don't have anything important on this drive. Alright, so to get started, I'm going to go ahead and open up Google Chrome, and I'm going to just search up Raspberry Pi OS download, and I'm going to click on the first link. Alternatively, you can just go to this URL directly. Now, what we're going to do to install Raspberry Pi OS is first install the Raspberry Pi Imager for Windows. What the Raspberry Pi Imager is it's the program that will take the operating system that we are going to download from the Raspberry Pi .org website, and it's going to properly install that onto the SD card that we have. Alright, so I've just clicked on the Imager file, and you should see a window pop up where you can click on yes or no. I'm going to click on yes. And then you should see this screen pop up. I'm going to go click on install, and now you can go ahead and wait for the install to finish. Alright, that only took a few seconds, so I'm going to go ahead and click on finish. You can see it's going to open up the Raspberry Pi Imager. We can close that for now since we haven't downloaded the image yet. So we're going to go back to the page. We're going to go back to Google Chrome under raspberrypi.org/downloads, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Raspberry Pi OS. Now under Raspberry Pi OS, I'm going to scroll down a bit more, and then I'm going to click on Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit with desktop and recommended software. I'm going to go ahead and click on download zip, and now this is a relatively large file, so it will take a little while to download. I'll see you once it's done downloading. Alright, so once the Raspberry Pi image is done downloading, what you can do is you can navigate to your downloads folder and find the image that you've just downloaded. It should be a compressed file, so you need to right click and click on extract all, and then click on extract, and then wait for this progress bar to finish loading. Alright, so once the Raspberry Pi image is done extracting, you should be left with this disk image file right over here. Now, to copy this disk image file over to your micro SD card, what you're going to want to do is open up the Raspberry Pi Imager that you've just installed. You might see a window pop up once again. Click on yes under the user account window, and then you should see the Raspberry Pi Imager open up once again. Under operating system, you want to click on choose OS, and then you can scroll all the way to the bottom and click on use custom, and then navigate to your downloads folder, double click on the extracted folder, and then select the image that you've just extracted. Now click on open, and under SD card, click on choose SD card, and you should automatically see the SD card that you've plugged into your computer. If you see multiple devices, make sure you're selecting the SD card that you want to format and install the Raspberry Pi OS onto. I'm going to go ahead and click on the only option I have, and now I'm going to go ahead and click on Write. Go ahead and wait for the Raspberry Pi Imager to finish writing the Raspberry Pi OS onto your SD card. Alright, once the Raspberry Pi image is done writing, you will see this screen over here where it will begin to verify. Just go ahead and wait for it to finish verifying as well. Alright, once Raspberry Pi Imager is done writing and verifying to the microSD card, you should see a window pop up within Raspberry Pi Imager that says Write Successful. Now you can go ahead and click on Continue under that window and then close out of Raspberry Pi Imager. Now, before we can say we're done with installing the Raspberry Pi OS onto our Raspberry Pi, there's one last step that we need to take. Since for this class, we're going to be accessing the Raspberry Pi through a host computer instead of directly plugging in a monitor and keyboard and mouse into our Raspberry Pi, we need to enable a network option on our Raspberry Pi in order to be able to connect to it with our computers. To do that, we need to change something within the boot partition of the Raspberry Pi OS. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on File Explorer, and then I'm going to go ahead and click on this PC. And next, you should see your microSD card drive appearing under Devices and Drives. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually right-click and click on Eject. Once it says it's safe to remove the drive, I'm going to go ahead and remove the drive and then insert it back into the computer. Now the reason I did that is that sometimes after installing the Raspberry Pi OS, the boot drive doesn't necessarily always show under this PC. Now you will see that the new volume is actually only a fraction of the initial capacity of your microSD card. That's completely normal because the rest of the capacity is actually now dedicated to the Raspberry Pi OS, and now what you're seeing here is just the boot volume of your Raspberry Pi OS. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search for Notepad, and I'm going to open up the Notepad application. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on File, I'm going to click on Save, I'm going to navigate over to this PC, I'm going to find my volume, and I'm going to create a brand new file called SSH, and I'm going to change the file type from text document to all files, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Save. Now what this does is that once the Raspberry Pi boots up for the first time, if it sees that SSH file, it's going to enable some network options for us to be able to connect to our Raspberry Pi in order to be able to see the Raspberry Pi desktop without actually plugging in a monitor directly to the Raspberry Pi. More information on how to set up the Raspberry Pi for the Progressive Kids Raspberry Pi class is going to be in the next video. Stay tuned until then, and thanks for watching. Bye.